I'm very excited to say that joining us tonight for the interview is a man who in the last 24 hours has become much more likely to be the next senator from the great state of Alaska. What happened in the last 24 hours to likely change his fortunes for the better is that Alaska's current Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski had to concede that she lost the Republican primary to a much more extreme, widely believed to be much less electable candidate, a Tea Party candidate named Joe Miller. Mr. Miller wants to ixnay unemployment benefits and Social Security and Medicare. Sorry, old people. He also says a woman who is raped should be forced by the government to bear the rapist's child. On the plus side for Joe Miller's electability, it should be noted that he has a beard, a big all-over-the-face beard. I think he is the only Senate candidate this year who has a full-face beard, so that will definitely make him stand out, and maybe that will help him. Joining us now for his first nationally televised interview is the mayor of Sitka, Alaska, the Democratic nominee for Senate in Alaska, who has a much smaller beard, Scott McAdams, who joins us from the Alaska State Fair. Mr. McAdams, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
The reason that Joe Miller is becoming nationally famous before you have, frankly, is because he is likely the most radical among a very radical class of GOP Senate candidates this year. I have to ask you, do you agree with him on the positions that unemployment benefits should be eliminated, Medicare and Social Security should be phased out and privatized? Do you agree with him on any of that?
Absolutely not. Social Security is a promise to Alaska's seniors as well as America's seniors. It's something that people worked all their lives for. It's a benefit that Alaskans deserve when they retire. As Alaska's next United States Senator, I'll stand up for Medicaid, for Medicare, and for Social Security for Alaskans.
Mr. McAdams, you have said in the past that when Senator Murkowski blocked an increase in liability caps for big oil, it was that convinced you that you wanted to run for Senate. Why was that so important to you?
Well, I'm a former commercial fisherman. I seined in the Kodiak district 2 years after the spill. And, I had the chance to chair the Alaska Democratic Party's state party down in Sitka this last year. Went to a candidate training, some different statewide candidates gave their stump speech. Somebody asked me to come forward before the room and give the stump speech, and they said, "What are you running for, sir?" And I said, "I'm running for the mayor of the city and borough of Sitka." Trainer said, "No, that's not good enough. Why don't you run against Lisa Murkowski?" So I stood up and I delivered a stump speech before a mock petroleum club in Anchorage. But one of the things that about that spill and about the spill in the Gulf is that we know that far too well in Alaska. So many communities in Alaska, in coastal Alaska, in southeast Alaska where I live, where commercial fishing is the second largest sector in our economy. So many fishermen still have not been made whole 20 years after the spill, and so it was part of the rationale that went into my decision to run. But early on, when I saw Todd Palin endorse this character, Joe Miller, my instinct said that Sarah Palin was coming next. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad that I'm a credible candidate, the only candidate in this race with any actual experience in elective governance, and I'm preparing to win come this fall.
Well, coming out of the primaries in what, of course, is a very, very red state in Alaska, Joe Miller's lead over you is not that big, single digits at this point. What is your overall campaign strategy to try to beat him? Do you intend to try to raise money nationally and run a real nationally minded campaign against him?
We're running an Alaskan campaign that puts Alaskans first. We're going out and talking to voters. We're at the Alaska State Fair right now. In fact, I'm the only guy at this fair with a tie on. But, we're going voter to voter, town to town. Alaska is a small population state, and it doesn't take a huge media buy to be competitive in this state. But, our platform is jobs, jobs, jobs. Joe Miller's strict interpretation of the Constitution, the things that he's alluded to, the things that he said, that he doesn't believe that any sort of government service that's not mandated within the four corners of the Constitution aren't appropriate. Alaska is a natural resource state. Being against oil and gas in Alaska is a little bit like being against farming in North Dakota. But, 1/3 of our economy ties back into federal investment in our state. We're a young state. We're a state that's still developing. Alaska needs to have representation in Washington, D.C. that stands up for Alaskans, that stands up for Alaska's infrastructure, that's willing to put Alaskans to work, that's willing to stand up for Alaskan working people. Rachel, Washington, D.C. is broken. everything is about partisanship. It's about trying to shame your opponent so that you can get a chairmanship the next year. Joe Miller says it's about incumbency. I actually think Joe Miller is exactly the wrong person for Alaska. I hope to go to Washington, D.C., continue to make the case to develop Alaska's natural resources, to put my name on the line for Alaska's working people. So many folks in this country have been offshored, outsourced, free traded, and deregulated to death. And as Alaska's next United States Senator, I will go and fight for working people.
Scott McAdams, mayor of Sitka, Alaska, Democratic candidate for United States Senate, joining us from the Alaska State Fair. Thanks very much for your time tonight, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
We'll also extend this invitation, which I am ever hopeful about, to the Republican candidate in the race, Mr. Joe Miller. It has been 24 hours since he's known for sure that he is the nominee. Mr. Miller, we would absolutely love to have you anytime.